Good morning. My name is Patty Mouton. I serve as Vice President for Outreach and Advocacy for Alzheimer's Orange County, which is your local community-based organization, not-for-profit, that provides education, support, consultation, advocacy, and many kinds of comprehensive services for free in our Memory Support Services Division. We've been serving Orange County for 40 years. It's a true pleasure today to welcome my colleagues, Jasmine Victor, who is our Director of Education, Kim Bailey, who is an Education and Programs Specialist, and Ben Allen, also an Education and Programs Specialist. And the three of us will be your speakers today, and we're just very pleased to be here. I'd like to welcome Hannah Kim, and she's going to say a few words of welcome as well. Good morning, Hannah.
Everyone, just want to express our appreciation, and we are so delighted to have the partnership and collaboration with Alzheimer's OC, and really want to also thank all of our health network partners who've joined us on this call, our own case management departments, as well as other departments within CalOptima Health, for your participation and attendance. And lastly, just again, want to extend that appreciation to Patty, to Jasmine, to Mark, to Kim, all of the folks from ALS OC. We truly appreciate your time and your efforts to bring this training to us. And I apologize, Ben, I did miss out on adding you to the list. My apologies, but thank you so much. And we look forward to learning further and having this time with you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah. And we too at Alzheimer's Orange County are extremely grateful for the collaboration and the partnership and the brainstorming that we've had with CalOptima, because Dementia Care Specialist training is going to be a very important part of all of our lives over the next year or so. So with that, we'll start our program and move on to the first slide. Today, we're giving you a 1-hour snapshot into what is a 12.5-hour Dementia Care Specialist full curriculum. It's evidence-based and evidence-informed, and we really want to know what kinds of challenges are most difficult for you as you deal with your members and with the patients that do have dementia. So please enter some of the challenges that you face into the chat box. We may not be able to address them today in this quick 1-hour little teaser of a class, but we will take that under advisement so that we address it when we do the full curriculum in early 2023. So let's talk about some of the statistics. If you could advance the slide for me. It is staggering to consider that right now, today, Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia constitute the third leading cause of death in Orange County. It's pretty staggering when you think about that, because we don't often think of Alzheimer's or other dementias as terminal diseases, but they in fact are. And 50% of primary care physicians don't feel that the medical profession in general is ready to take care of the onslaught of these older adults who will develop cognitive impairment. I think it's really important to frame just how great this threat is in our country. It's expensive for the family, for the individual, and for the providers of service. And 1 in 3 of our older adult seniors dies with Alzheimer's or from another dementia. So next slide, please. For those of us who are dealing in large part with people who are Medi-Cal beneficiaries, a really important thing to consider is that the prevalence of Alzheimer's and related dementias in the population of those over 65 who are duly eligible for Medicare and Medi-Cal is almost twice what it is in the general population of people over 65. In general, at age 65, just under 11% of people have true indicators of Alzheimer's or related dementia. In the population that is duly eligible for Medicare and Medi-Cal, that prevalence is more than 20%. So we need to be on the lookout for it. This disease is devastating for the person, for their family, and it's extremely expensive for us as a society to provide this care. So we want to get to the bottom of it sooner than later. Only half of the people that show frank symptoms of Alzheimer's disease ever receive a diagnosis. And only half of the people who have a diagnosis actually have it entered into their medical record, which is part of where having dementia care specialists is going to come in, because we're going to do a much better job of early detection, appropriate screening and diagnosis, and then linking people into community resources with a really good care plan. So next slide, please. The warning signs, we could do a whole 2-hour class on just the warning signs of Alzheimer's or related dementia, but it's important for you to recognize them and to then start some kinds of interventions or a little more fact finding with your patients, because if we can identify early symptoms, we just might identify that what is causing their dementia could be something reversible. And Ben is going to get into more of those particulars, but it may not be Alzheimer's that's causing their confused state and cognitive impairment. So getting to the bottom of things early and not just letting something go, we don't want to gloss over these symptoms. Next slide, please. So what will a dementia care specialist do? Well, this particular position has been carved out in the new CalAIM program. And so these folks will carry a caseload either as a navigator or as a case manager of people who are living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. And we know that you as professionals really thrive when you can use structured, evidence-based protocols. So we're going to help to provide you with those roadmaps that will help to ensure greater success and better relief of the suffering of the people we're looking to help. We know, of course, this has to be a multidisciplinary activity because all disciplines on the continuum of care can positively impact the care, the trajectory of the disease, and some of the outcomes for these particular patients. We know that as care managers and care navigators, you're troubleshooting all the time. In dementia, it's going to be ratcheted up a little bit because there's so many different nuances of problems that may or may not have been recognized by the family or by their provider previously. And you're going to help people with ongoing support, connection to community resources. You're going to hand off a lot of the nuts and bolts kind of assistance and support to organizations like Alzheimer's Orange County, who will be your partner in this care. Next slide. So as we get ready for this training in early 2023, we want you to be really engaged with this information. So I'm going to turn things over to my colleague and friend, Ben Allen, and he's going to talk a little bit more about what the nuts and bolts of the training will be. But remember, we only have 1 hour today, so you're just going to get the highlights. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Patty. As Patty mentioned, it's important to pay attention to warning signs. The challenge is that as we age, our cognitive processes slow down. And so it can be a challenge to recognize what's normal for aging and what's something to be concerned with. So let's go to the next slide, Jasmine, and we'll look at some examples. So it's normal that it takes us longer to process and make decisions, to recall information, but intelligence remains stable and we can still form new memories. It's a concern when individuals are having more and more difficulty with day-to-day activities. it's normal that we have trouble with word finding. I experience that every day, and very often when I'm speaking to groups, I'll struggle with a word, and it can be very frustrating. It's a completely different situation with dementia as the language capabilities decrease. And so that will involve not only word finding, but reading and writing, and just participating in conversations. It's normal as we age that our ability to pay attention, to stay focused, declines. And so we're more easily distracted. But when we observe individuals repeating questions, telling the same stories over and over, that's a concern. That's a warning sign that we should pay attention to. So slower, everything takes longer. And in older individuals, and that includes me, it's normal. But when we see the kinds of changes that result in concern, whether it's family, friends, something's going on here, in the individual's ability to perform just normal everyday tasks as a challenge. Those are the kinds of things that we want to pay attention to. Next slide, please. One of the things that we'll spend more time talking about is the difference between dementia and the cause of the dementia. So dementia refers to the decline in cognitive function, and there are many different causes, specific conditions that are causing that decline. And the number one cause is Alzheimer's disease. And so we'll spend a lot more time talking about Alzheimer's disease and other irreversible conditions. And at the same time, there are some conditions that are reversible, given proper identification and treatment. And so we'll spend more time talking about all of those. As the note at the bottom says, there are 120 different causes of dementia, and the symptoms can vary widely between those. So we'll go into a lot more detail on that. Just important to recognize dementia is an overarching term describing decline in cognitive functions, and getting to the root of what's causing those is really key. So next slide. So what changes? Short answer, everything. Initially, we typically see memory loss, short-term memory loss, as the primary presenting symptom. But as the disease progresses, we'll see every cognitive domain impacted. And so every function of the brain is affected and impacts daily life. And so I won't go into all the details here, but looking at the images on the right, the top image is of a cross-section of a normal, healthy brain, where there's very little space. The tissues are tight and close together. The bottom image is showing an advanced a brain affected by advanced Alzheimer's disease, where there's a lot of space, and the folds of the brain are more separated, and that's the result of the damage the disease is causing. And as that damage takes place, there's atrophy within the brain tissue. And so all of the symptoms we see, the changes in individuals, as a result of the loss of neurons and other brain tissue. And so we'll go into a lot more detail on that in the program next year. Next slide. So one of the biggest challenges, in addition to addressing the needs of the patient, is focusing on the family and the needs that the families have, and their need to understand what's happening for the person that they're caring for, so that they can better respond and adapt to the changes. And so it goes beyond memory. As I said, it's ultimately every cognitive function with the progression. And with all of these progressive neurological diseases, we have no cure. And so the progression will ultimately lead to the death of the individual. But one thing that's really important is to recognize when there are sudden changes or seemingly overnight dramatic change. And so that is often the result of an acute problem like an infection, whether that's a urinary infection or pneumonia, lots of potential causes, but those are concern and need to be addressed immediately so that they're not life-threatening alone. Everybody's different. The progression of the disease varies widely from person to person, but the strategies and the techniques, or the skills, as we like to call them, can be used by everyone, practitioners and family members and friends. And so we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about those skills and opportunity to practice some of those skills. Next. The impact of dementia on communication is one of the biggest challenges, again, for families and practitioners alike. We'll see a lot of impact in the ability of the individual to communicate and their ability to understand or receptive language. And so we have to adapt our approach in communicating and, for example, just slowing down, allowing the individual time to process information and not rushing from one subject or detail to another. It's quite common for individuals suffering to withdraw and not engage verbally, or to, if English is not their native language, to revert to their native language. All of those and more are challenges in communication. Next. So one of the things that we have to recognize is that most communication, and this is true for any relationship, not just with those who are suffering from dementia, in every connection we have with another person, most of the communication comes through body language and tone of voice, and only a small percentage of the message that gets across is through words. And so we have to be purposeful about the message that we send with our body language. And of course, that's not just my posture, although that's part of it. It's also gestures and facial expressions. And we can use the tone to send a warm and inviting message. We want to create an atmosphere in which we can make a connection with individuals, help them to feel more at ease, more comfortable, and then we can have an effective and positive time together. Next. So I like this quote. This is from a book by Christine Bryden, Dancing with Dementia. And Christine had early stage dementia. And she says, as we become more emotional and less cognitive, it's the way you talk to us, not what you say, that we will remember. We know the feeling, but we don't know the plot. Your smile, your laugh, your touch are what we will connect with. And again, we come back to connection, finding a way to connect with the individual, to help them be at ease and free to engage with you and others. Next. we know that distress comes with discomfort, and there may be lots of reasons for discomfort. There's some need that hasn't been met, and it may be difficult for the individual to let us know what that is. And they can quickly go from a state of being content and escalate into frustration and anger and fury and potentially even physical aggression. And so our goal is to help them stay in the green. And how do we do that? We identify needs. And sometimes we just have to be careful observers and pick up on the individual's body language. What's the message they're sending us through their body language, through their attention? What are they focused on? We may simply need to eliminate as many distractions as we can so that we can make that connection and try to avoid that escalation that'll take place, and get them back into the green. That's our goal, as much as we can. And so there are lots of ways that we can do that. And we'll go into the details on those skills as we get into the full program. Next. And so I want to bring in our coworker, Kim Bailey, to talk about caring for the care partner. Kim.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ben. As you were going over just snippets of your portion, I was struck by how important these topics are, particularly when it comes to the communication challenges that we know our families are experiencing with their loved ones. And then that last slide that just touches on some of the behavioral expressions that can occur in day-to-day caregiving. And I just wanted to, as a caveat, mention that Patty said we'll be partnering with you, and that's so true. And one of the things that we do in Jasmine's department is to offer monthly workshops for family care partners on these topics: communication, how to have a caring conversation with the person you're caring for, and then, how to react to behavioral expressions that we frequently see. So I'm excited to, share that with you, and to also tell you that a lot of the tools that will be rolling out in the program as we do the full training will really help to mitigate some of these problems that families are having, and that's a good thing. And that's my focus in this little snapshot today, is just to talk a little bit about the care partners. And we use that term care partner as well as caregiver. But I'll mention, because I do a lot of work in the early stage area, that, when people are first diagnosed, their significant other has trouble thinking of themselves in terms of being a caregiver. But it's actually, we'll go to the next slide, please, a very complex process, the transition to being a caregiver or a care partner. So just take a look at what you're seeing on your screen here. And I can tell you right now, because I've been a personal caregiver myself, that it's a partial list. But, when we ask caregivers to describe different roles that they have, these are some of the things that they are responsible for. They need to manage excess disability or coexisting conditions. We know that older adults often have one, if not multiple, chronic conditions that they're managing. They may have Parkinson's disease, they may have high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, etc. And now there's another layer of burden added with dementia. So the care partners aren't just, paying attention to the dementia, but they're trying to manage just the overall health of the person that they're caring for. They have to gradually take over medication management, which is, one of the benchmarks of the disease, along with giving up driving. Folks are very reluctant to relinquish their autonomy. And So, but it's critical that our patients are taking their medications properly so that they can be effective. Our care partners have to be able to do, sort of an eyeball type assessment of their loved ones all the time, just to sort of be watching for other conditions that are cropping up. And as the person progresses in the illness, they're not going to be able to communicate those new conditions to the care partner. And so, it takes an eagle eye to really, assess when things are changing or something is actually, if something happens abruptly, we know that's probably a medical issue. For persons with multiple conditions or persons in later stage dementia, sometimes care partners are called upon to do wound care, and they're not nurses. They're managing behavioral expressions, and although not all persons living with dementia experience behavioral disruptions, is very common. They are managing appointments, so they're the front desk, they're the office manager trying to keep all these balls in the air with doctor appointments and everything else. They are now the transportation as that person needs to relinquish their driving. They become the primary decision maker. And this is very painful for couples who have been married for a long time and they're used to sharing conversations about their future and how their day-to-day, etc. So it all falls on the shoulders of the care partner. And by the way, when I say care partner, I could be talking about a spouse, or I could be talking about an adult who's caring for a parent. I could also be talking about a friend who is the primary care partner. So we have a great diversity in our caregiver pool. On the other side of the screen, you see things like hygiene. One of the early symptoms of dementia is that the persons who, many people who were previously very meticulous about their appearance may become unkempt and, not paying attention to, their personal hygiene. And so as the disease progresses, it's incumbent upon the caregiver to step in and provide assistance with activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, grooming, everything. Meals, they take over meals. I was just chatting with one of my spouses the other day, and he had never boiled water. And now he's caring for his young onset wife. She's 60 years old. She has Lewy body dementia, and he is taking over all these roles, including chef, housekeeping, keeping the home running, home safety, maintenance. We often talk to females that are caring for their husbands, and especially in traditional marriages, they'll tell us, it was always my job to do the inside of the house, and he did everything outside. So now all of a sudden, it's on the shoulders of the care partner to do maintenance and upkeep and take care of the yard and garden as well as the inside of the house. Finances, another benchmark in the disease when we find it necessary to have the care partners take over the finances. What can happen if they don't? We've had individuals who just stopped making their house payments and the spouse didn't know until it went into foreclosure. Or we have people being victimized by the many scams that abound for seniors. Or they're being taken advantage of some other way. Supervision. At first, it's hard to know how much or how little is needed, but in time, as the disease slowly progresses, care partners take a bigger role in everything, and they have to provide 24/7 oversight. It becomes dangerous to leave a person living with dementia alone. They can leave the burner on the stove, start a fire. They can leave the house and wander off and become lost. So being alone is fraught with peril, and that needs to be addressed. And so what about the care partner who works? or how can the care partner get away to shop and do things, etc. So these are some of the things that case managers are able to problem solve with their clients. And when you become a dementia care specialist, we'll give you tools, as we've indicated all along, to do so. And then finally, socialization. So what we don't want to see are people who become isolated in the community. And you know, in your role already, that you see a lot of older adults that do that. They withdraw from society, they're not engaged, and that can lead to very negative outcomes and poor quality of life. So we want to make sure that people are still provided opportunities for activities, etc. We can do that through our adult day health centers, CBES centers, PACE program, all of the wonderful services that we have available in Orange County. So this is just, as I said, kind of a taste of what care partners do. And, you know, it's in here because we want you to be fully aware of the scope and magnitude of caregiving. Next slide, please. And then there are unique concerns and considerations as well, because we know that caregiving is more demanding as the disease progresses. So think about a family where you've got someone that is caring for their loved one for maybe 10 years. It could, I mean, this disease can last anywhere from 3 to 20 years. And so day in and day out, the 24/7 and the increasing level of burden that's associated with the disease as it goes on. So care partners have to learn a whole new language, a whole new way of being with that person. And again, they're charged with, you know, myriad responsibilities. So we need to keep an eye on our care partners. I will share with you that there are times when new couples will come into my office, and at first glance, I'm not always sure now which one is the patient and which one is the care partner, because of the impact of caregiving on an individual. So let's go to the next slide. So here is where we have to really think of the care partner as a second victim in this disease. We know historically that caregivers will sacrifice their own needs and they'll put their own well-being aside. And they'll be laser focused on the person they're caring for and self-neglecting. So many will experience negative health and emotional outcomes as a result of long-term caregiving. And I think the statistic is about 50% of caregivers meet the criteria for clinical depression. So they're not very self-aware. We have to work with them at all times to make sure that they are indulging in self-care because of the stress, burnout, and sheer fatigue that they're going through, which can lead to crisis situations. Next slide, please. So I am going to turn it back over to our colleague, Patty Mouton, and she's going to talk a little bit about how dementia care specialists can help.
Thank you so much, Kim. And if you are putting your questions into the chat box, or maybe you have a comment or something that you really want us to address, if we have time today, we will, but also we'll be able to factor that in to the longer dementia care specialist training, because we want your thoughts. Dementia care specialists are kind of a new thought and a new type of discipline within care navigation and care management, because Kim has talked about just how stressful it is and difficult for the care partner, especially a family care partner. And a really, really frightening statistic is that people who are caring for a loved one, a spouse with a dementia, have about a 60% higher mortality rate than their cohorts in society. So this can be deadly for the person who doesn't have dementia. And since very often If you're caring for one part of the family, one spouse, you're very likely also caring for this well spouse of the person with dementia. So we really have to look at the care needs of both sides of this equation. So as a dementia care specialist, you can identify who are the person's informal or family caregivers, who are the care partners, who validates what this person has to say. We look at validated caregiver assessment tools as well, because most caregivers will not ask for help. They won't identify that they're having trouble. Everything is fine until there's a catastrophe and their whole support system crumbles underneath them, and they don't have a backup plan. So part of a dementia care specialist role is to help people look at the totality of the situation and make sure they've got some backup systems in place. Dementia care specialists will help to guide how to prioritize care interventions, prioritize referral to certain kinds of services. Most people whom you will be helping to supervise and orchestrate their care don't know anything about services like adult day health care. They don't know about being able to get respite care. Maybe they also can qualify for in-home supportive services. Maybe they're just not aware of all the types of extra care and consideration they can tap into if they just knew about it. So part of what we're going to do is teach all of you who become dementia care specialists how to connect people to and get them referred to the right kinds of community resources. A really easy way to do it, which we will factor into this training, is Alzheimer's Orange County has a HIPAA compliance system whereby you provide us with the information about this patient and family, like you would refer them to a podiatrist or a dermatologist. You refer them to dementia care assistants, and we will then contact them, make the connection, and we have about an 85% success rate of getting in contact with these people and then introducing them and getting them to opt in for services, which we know we have studies that absolutely support that if we can give people as little as 4 hours of evidence-based education for that care partner, we might be able to delay institutionalization by as much as 18 months. We know we can improve the trajectory of the disease simply by having a really well-educated caregiver. So education, support, resources. Family caregivers need to have somebody to talk to. Maybe you have time for this, maybe you don't, but you can certainly connect them to us because we have time. That's a huge part of what we do. So we really want to assess caregivers, know how they are, what's their depression level, are they getting their particular clinical needs met? And we want to look at the caregiver strain, and we will help you with these caregiver assessment tools so that we can really finally identify who's going to need more support than we're currently giving them. So next slide, please. So in early 2023, CalOptima is arranging dementia care specialist training, and we'll have 2 cohorts to start with. There'll be 25 individuals in each cohort. And the training is about 12.5 hours, and you will get certificates. And this particular curriculum is in sync with our sister organization in Alzheimer's Los Angeles. So LA County, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Orange County, all of those of you who will become dementia care specialists will have this common, grounded, validated curriculum. And we really hope that many of you will participate. Ask your supervisor if you're one of the candidates to become a dementia care specialist. We would like to have as many as possible really feel comfortable and confident with not only how to interact with their patients, but also how to do the very best work for the families that we serve. Next slide, please. These are our references, so you know that things are evidence-based, and you can move on to the next slide. And our helpline is staffed with licensed clinical social workers and social work interns under supervision of an LCSW. So these are folks who are well-oriented, well-trained, and ready to help your families if they have an instant question, if they're having a little bit of a concern, maybe they can't get dad to get in or out of the car. Maybe they can't get grandpa to take a shower. We're there for all those kinds of services and support, but we're also there to help them kind of figure out what is their care intervention and plan going to be, and what are the steps that the care partner needs to take with the family in order to have a very organized, well-orchestrated care plan that will bring down the stress of everyone involved, will make the person with dementia a little more healthy because they will be anticipating what their needs are. And it will create more of a basis of non-emergent reactive kind of care and more prospective care where we're anticipating what the person's changing needs will be. So we invite you to look at our website because we have video and a YouTube channel with just a wealth of information on training and many, many topics related to Alzheimer's, related to all forms of dementia, some of the behavioral issues in dementia, end of life care issues. So take a look at all of the different offerings that you can access for free on our YouTube channel. We keep you up to date on social media via Facebook, and you can call the helpline just about any time. And your families can call the helpline Monday through Friday during business hours. It's always staffed. And if they call after business hours, then the very next morning, they're going to get a return phone call. So we've given you an awful lot of information in a very, very short period of time. We have about 10 minutes so that we can answer and address some of your questions or some of your comments. So Jasmine, if you would like to read some of the questions that may have come in, then we can attempt to start answering them. So back to you, Jasmine.
You're on mute. Jasmine?
There we go. There you go. Yes, sorry.
Perfect.
How might we get resources for dementia for out-of-state relatives?
That's a really good question. Call us, call our helpline, and we will then help you get connected to a sister organization in the area of the country where that family happens to be. So we do have networks of sister organizations, other community-based organizations that would very likely provide similar types of services.
I'll tag on to that. If we have long distance care partners who are living in Orange County and they're concerned about a parent or someone at a distance, we can also have them tap into our many support groups because some of them are online, or the vice versa is true. If we have care partners on the East Coast, they can go to our Zoom meetings as well. A lot of our education and support groups are still on Zoom, and we're going to keep it that way because our care partners were resistant at first to the Zoom technology when the pandemic first hit. But now they've recognized that they're more readily able to participate when they don't have to leave the home. And so having a hybrid model of in-person as well as Zoom support has been working very effectively for everyone. We are all here. We all have our cameras on and we can take ourselves off mute. And we do have time, as it was indicated, to answer questions. So who has a question for us?
Kim, just before we go into any Q&As from the group here, we had a few questions about the Dementia Care Specialists, that training that I'd like to address.
Okay.
So for our health networks and also our case management teams from CalOptima Health, Just to share, we do have this wonderful collaboration with Alzheimer's OC for dementia care specialist training, as you'd heard from Patty. We will have 2 sessions, one in February, the second about mid-year next year. There'll be more information to come to our health networks. It will just be a few select from each organization. It is conducted in English because it's just to clarify, the specialist training is geared towards case managers, key case managers identified within your organization who will become those key points of contact, that subject matter expert, if you will, for your other team members. So it's a train the trainer type of situation. So I do want to clarify, it's for case management team members in order to provide more of that expertise support from the trainings received from Alzheimer's OC. So I hope that helps clarify some of those questions. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Other questions? Do we have any others in the Q&A box? Let's see.
No more questions, looks like.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to give you back about 8 to 10 minutes of your day. We certainly have enjoyed this opportunity to just give you a snapshot of what the Dementia Care Specialist training program will be. We appreciate all the ways that you care for the patients that we also serve. And our older adults are treasures, and we want to do our very best to ensure that we give them the best care possible in every way possible. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again, and we wish you all the warmest, healthiest, happiest holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.